We received a lot of questions indeed this afternoon. We will not be able to address all the questions, but no problem at all. We will collect all your questions. We will provide the speakers with them, and you will receive later on answer in written forms or by uploading the answer to the chat or to the common SharePoints. Okay, so let's start from a first round of question, and I can't see if Takis is on the screen. It's my fault, probably due to my setup. Takis, are you there?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Sorry. Okay, so just first question. It's about sustainability, and it's considering that novel foods could help to create healthier and more sustainable diets. Do you foresee novel foods will be further regulated and or covered by the upcoming sustainability food system legislative framework or any kind of labeling covering sustainability? And if yes, in which way? Very complex question, I think.
Is it for me?
Yes, it seems it's for you.
Okay.
These are right.
No, okay. Listen, in terms of food safety, I can tell you that novel innovative foods are already covered by the novel foods, as I mentioned in my speech. When it comes to any future sustainability type of legislation, initiatives, labeling, obviously that needs to be answered only when that legislation is finalized and adopted. I'm not in a position to comment on this, simply because this is work in progress and really don't know which way we'll go. So I'm afraid I cannot really I cannot really answer that one at this point. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. And another question, which is probably more technical, is about what is, let me say, I will just go through the question, but we will try to make a paraphrasis of the text after all. What is the price for a company? So which kind of investment a company has to do, and how long after the process they will receive authorization if data is not protected? And is it possible to make group applications, something like several startups applying for the same novel food product? This is quite important in my view, because probably it's something that the food business operator, especially small to medium enterprise, are often asking.
I imagine this is for me. I will answer by answering the second. Yes, it is possible to have multiple applicants applying for the same food. Yeah. The other one is not possible. Multiple foods for multiple applicants. But having multiple applicants for the same food, yes, it is possible. In terms of investment, it depends really on the type of studies. The numbers that we have is, if you are to conclude and do the full range of studies that are needed, it can go up to 600, 700,000 euros, simply because some of the subchronic toxicity studies really cost a lot of money. And this is why in a lot of the applications where actually applicants have spent this money, and I'm talking about novel foods, not traditional food.
Yes.
Yeah, because traditional food you can get safety data from the public domain. A lot of them really do prefer to have the data protection, because at least in 5 years' time, after the food is authorized, they can obviously have some compensation for what they have invested.
Okay, thank you very much. I will move to the next speaker, and then maybe I can come back to you, Takis, later. So for Bernard and Georgia, can you give, please, an example of circular economy emerging risk analysis? So how emerging risk can be linked to circular economy? If it's possible, of course, briefly. It's a very large question.
Yeah, no, I will take it. So as from my presentation, I was mentioning that we did some proactive work in specific areas of interest for detecting emerging risks. One of these areas was circular economy, and we did a foresight exercise focusing on circular feed. and more precisely on the issue of using food byproducts, former foodstuff, and food waste as animal feed, because some countries outside of Europe, like Japan, for example, are already using food waste as animal feed. And this is a topic that was selected because at that time, going beyond just the sustainability consideration, it was also coinciding with the war in Ukraine and the shortage of traditional feed material that we were facing in Europe. So that was a bit the kind of topics that were discussed. So we did a foresight exercise co-involving a number of partners from FAO, from the EEA, from the European Commission, etc. And actually, there is a report that have been produced following this foresight exercise. So we have sent it to Christina, and she will circulate it to the participants if they want to have further details.
Bernard, Christina has already put the link of the report to the chat of the participants, so they can have access and they can see all the material that they want.
Perfect. I think there is another question that is quite connected to this. So it can be for you, Bernard and Georgia, or also for Cindy or Takis as well. So how can developing countries such as South American or Africa as well, or Southeast Asia, begin to implement a legislative framework for emerging risk analysis, and how all these international bodies, that's more from my side, can relate or can be connected on novel food legislative framework? It's very difficult, I know, but
no, Takis here. Maybe I should try. We need to make a distinction between the regulatory framework and the tool that you use in risk analysis. Yeah. Right now, for example, to take the example of Europe, we have the novelty regulation, but EFSA is doing the risk assessment. And EFSA already knows that if you have innovative, and is developing actually, a colleague from EFSA can correct me if I'm wrong here, and it's actually thinking on a forward-looking mode, what are the elements, risk-needed elements that need to be introduced in its analysis paradigms in order to address what you would call emerging risk from innovative foods. I mean, if there are any, because often you have to really identify if there are any new risks coming with innovative foods. So the answer for a developing country, I would say, is put in place your regulatory framework that really would address innovative foods, in other words, would capture the innovative foods, and then allow your scientists that are dealing with risk analysis themselves to develop the processes and paradigms that would address them. I don't think you should try to do that in a regulatory mode. The regulations should really say certain things on a higher level, safe, sustainable, whatever it has, safe in this case, and then the actual working of it needs to be done by the people who would actually do the risk analysis.
Okay. Thank you very much. So, for Alexander, what are the major factors or consideration in your view that need to be focused on selecting emerging food production? So when you plan a new food production or new pipeline, which factor must be considered, should be considered?
Yeah, thanks, Chiara. Thanks for the question also. Quite broad question. I want to mention some factors which, for example, are very relevant, at least from my point of view. And I've shown that on the reverse engineering approach. So it should be able to deliver affordable nutrition. If just 1% of our global population can benefit from this, is not impactful from my point of view. The challenges in front of us are the other 99%. And it should be a region-specific approach. We have very different conditions outside the EU, inside the EU, in developing areas, the global south. So what is needed there? It can be a completely different approach in such a region like developing areas, rural versus urban, and so on, has to be considered. And then consumers should really also be open. We have many initiatives where we didn't take the consumers on board, and then we develop something, and there is a significant resistance. I want to give you examples regarding radiation. Radiation is a safe technology. It's highly scaled, and people don't want radiated food because it's labeled, of course, and it is just an example here. Or insect-based food, there is a significant resistance at the consumer side regarding insect-based foods, and to change that takes a lot of time. So please, let's get the consumers on board very early. For example, we do that in our Singapore project because the Asian consumer are very different to the European consumers again. Yeah? And then the last point, it was also mentioned, novel foods they are not sustainable and healthy per se. We need to prove that. Yeah, and sustainability performance can be used to we have quantitative measures. Let's measure the performance or estimate it instead of just saying it's more sustainable, which is very often, by the way, not true for the not optimized, not scaled solutions yet. And whether it's healthy or not, that is a completely different question. On top, here, a lot of misunderstanding is also, unfortunately, around health benefits must be scientifically proved, and otherwise I avoid them normally. We can talk about nutritional benefits, and then we need to do our homework, especially in the scientific community, to really evaluate whether these novel foods are more healthy as well.
I fully agree with you. Thank you. I think this point is really important, especially what you said about sustainability and also nutritional property that has to be proven, because sometimes it's just novel food is sustainable per se, just because of the definition. But anyway, that's my feeling. But anyway, another question, a specific question for Cindy. Yeah, from the chat. As we are moving forward developing alternative proteins, are we also simultaneously working on labeling of alternative proteins and allergen declaration on the package?
Well, yeah, labeling is indeed something that is planned in the Farm to Fork strategy. There is actually an action about labeling, so definitely this is something that needs to be developed. The only thing with labeling is that, in my view, there are quite a lot of labels already, and it can provide confusion. So that's why we need some kind of an update on both what exists and what what is basically emerging. So it's up to to this action, especially in the Farm to Fork strategy, to provide some little bit of highlights on the labeling aspects. But yes, I would say that definitely if we promote the development of alternative proteins, and I'm not saying that we should when I say promoting developing alternative proteins, I mean tackling the overconsumption of meat and dairy. And so when we move toward this, we also need to make sure that the consumers have the right information. And this is the work of labeling. They can provide this kind of information. So yes, the development of alternative proteins also need to be in pair with the labels. It has to be adapted to them as well.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So we are running out of time, so I will drop the last question for Takis, but feel free to jump in if you have other views on the point. And it's again a general question. It's about again communication or engagement between different institutions. So how are regulators around the world, just to say FDA or Canadian authority or other authorities in the world, communicating with each other regarding the new findings or the process around novel foods? And I will just add Europe and UK. We are quite close, so this is another important point. Thank you.
Basically, although there is no established structured dialogue between the regulators in the world, when there are new developments, there is ad hoc communication with the colleagues in Canada, the United States, Australia, and what have you. The same holds true with the UK. I must admit, there was a period of less communication after Brexit, and I think that was more or less expected.
Yes.
But in recent months, the links have been reestablished, and we do have on occasion contact. If you're asking for a structured dialogue, that doesn't exist. It existed in the past, but it may not be necessary, because really when these developments happen, there are enough communication elements between the different regulators that allow the knowledge to be shared. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I think we have reached the end of the afternoon. There are still many questions in the chat, but most of them will be addressed anyway tomorrow by other speakers or during the day and in the case studies in the afternoon. So we will find a way to provide answers and replies to all the questions. Again, I will my thank you to all the speakers. You did an incredible job today, so many thanks for having joined us on this school. Again, many thanks to all the colleagues behind the scenes and to the audience, and we will meet again tomorrow morning.